The sun had barely crept above the New York skyline when I stepped into my corner office. Floor-to-ceiling windows painted the room gold, the Hudson River glinting like liquid fire. I slid off my trench coat, smoothing the silk blouse beneath. A faint scent of jasmine clung to the fabric, my own small luxury. The espresso machine hissed in the background, filling the air with the scent of roasted perfection. I took my first sip, the warmth curling through me like armor. My assistant, Mariah, had already left a stack of reports on my desk, but it wasn't the numbers that caught my attention, it was my phone. One new message. From Mom. "We're in town. Thought we'd stop by your job." That last word, job, sat heavy on the screen, as if it were a downgrade from something respectable, as if years hadn't passed since the night they laughed across the dinner table at what I did for a living. I set the phone down slowly, my fingertips grazing the cool glass of the desk. Part of me wanted to ignore it. The other part, the one that had been waiting for this exact moment, straightened her spine and smiled. They thought they were visiting their struggling daughter. They had no idea they were about to walk into the empire I built. And I was ready. I was 22, fresh out of college, and clinging to a dream that didn't fit neatly into anyone's expectations, especially my parents. It was a humid summer evening in Boston. We were gathered around the oak dining table in my childhood home, the one my father had polished every Sunday for as long as I could remember. Mom had made her famous lemon chicken. I'd barely touched mine. "So, Emily," Dad began, slicing into his meat with the precision of a man who loved control, "have you thought about applying to a real job yet?" I blinked. "This is a real job, Dad. I'm freelancing as a social media consultant. I have 3 clients already." That's when the laughter started. Soft at first from my mom, then louder from Dad, the kind that doesn't stop even when they see the hurt in your eyes. "Sweetheart," Mom said between chuckles, "you get paid to post pictures and write captions? That's adorable. But come on, you can't live off that." The lump in my throat was sharp enough to swallow tears with it. My hands were trembling under the table, so I gripped the hem of my skirt until my knuckles whitened. Dad shook his head. "One day you'll thank us when you're sitting in a proper office, with a stable paycheck, doing something respectable. This little online hobby won't last." It wasn't just the words, it was the way they dismissed me without a second thought. As if my ambition was a child's game, destined to fade. That night, after the dishes were cleared, my grandmother slipped into my room. She was the quiet force in the family, the one who never interrupted but always noticed. She pressed a small, vintage fountain pen into my hand. The gold trim caught the lamplight. "This," she said softly, "is the pen your grandfather used when he signed the deed to his first business. Don't let anyone tell you your dreams are small. Sign your own future." I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my desk, writing down every idea, every goal, every stubborn refusal to quit. By sunrise, I decided. I wasn't going to wait for their approval. I was going to make them see. The first year felt like running uphill in a thunderstorm, every step heavy, every misstep sending me sliding back. I moved into a cramped studio apartment in Queens. The walls were thin enough to hear my neighbors' late-night TV marathons, and the bathroom door never quite closed all the way. My office was a folding table wedged between my bed and the window. Every morning, I'd brew the cheapest coffee I could find, wrap myself in my grandmother's cardigan, and open my laptop to a sea of rejection emails. Not at this time. We've decided to go in another direction. No one said, "We don't believe in you," but that's what it felt like. I took any gig that came my way, designing flyers for a bakery, managing Instagram for a local hair salon, even running Facebook ads for a dog walking service. The pay was laughable, but each project taught me something. How to read analytics, how to negotiate, how to make my work impossible to ignore. Then I met Lorraine. She was in her late 50s, a powerhouse in the marketing world, with a sharp bob and sharper wit. We'd met at a networking mixer I almost skipped because I couldn't afford the $20 ticket. She asked what I did, and instead of downplaying it, I told her everything, the clients, the strategies, the wins I'd scraped together. She didn't laugh. She leaned in. You've got an instinct, kid. Let's sharpen it. Under her mentorship, I learned how to pitch to corporations, how to scale services, how to build a team. My first big break came from a tech startup she referred me to. Within months, their engagement tripled, their sales spiked, and suddenly my name was on the radar. I reinvested every dollar back into the business. Better equipment, smarter tools, hiring my first assistant. My clientele shifted from mom-and-pop shops to national brands. But with every win, I kept quiet. To my parents, I was still doing my little online thing. I posted modest updates on Facebook, nothing flashy. If they asked about money, I said I was getting by. The truth was, I was making more in a month than some people made in a year. By year 4, I signed the lease on a sleek Manhattan office with glass walls and a skyline view. The company I'd built, Ember Digital, wasn't just a business. It was a force. We had 30 employees, global clients, and a reputation for turning struggling brands into industry leaders. And yet, my parents still thought I was hustling to pay rent. I let them, because I knew the day would come when they'd see it all, and I wanted that reveal to be unforgettable. 2 days after my mother's text, I heard the elevator chime outside my office. Mariah peeked in. "Emily, they're here." I stood, smoothing the sleeves of my cream silk blouse, my grandmother's gold fountain pen tucked neatly into my pocket. My heels clicked across the polished marble floor as I walked to greet them. The elevator doors opened, and there they were, Dad in his navy blazer, Mom clutching her purse like she was bracing for bad news. "Hi, sweetheart," Mom said, giving me a polite once-over, her eyes flicking to the open concept workspace beyond. "This is nice. Is this where you work?" "Something like that," I said, fighting the smile tugging at my lips. I led them through the office, letting the scene do the talking. The walls displayed framed campaign posters for global brands. Employees in tailored clothes moved between glass-walled conference rooms. The hum of activity was steady and confident, the sound of a well-oiled machine. Dad's brows drew together. "All these people, they work here?" "They do," I said. "For me." We stopped outside the largest conference room, floor-to-ceiling windows flooding the space with sunlight. Inside, my senior team was prepping for a meeting, the Ember Digital logo glowing on the screen behind them. Mom blinked. "You run this company?" I met her gaze, my voice steady. "I don't just run it. I built it. From the ground up." There was a silence that felt almost physical, pressing against us. Dad finally spoke. "Wait, Ember Digital. That's your company? The one that landed the big tech merger last year?" "That's right," I said, letting the weight of the truth settle. "We lead campaigns in 20 countries. I own the entire operation." Mom's lips parted like she wanted to speak, but no words came out. Dad's hand tightened on the back of a leather chair, as if he needed something to hold on to. I didn't rush them. I wanted them to take it in. The view of the Empire State Building from my office window, the awards gleaming on the shelf, the framed photo of my team celebrating our first $1 million contract. Finally, I broke the silence. "You remember when you said my job was a hobby? That it wouldn't last? That I should get something respectable?" They both shifted uncomfortably. "Well," I said, my voice firm but calm, "you mocked my job. Now I own the industry." The words hung in the air, sharp but not cruel. Dad cleared his throat. "Emily, we didn't realize." "No," I said softly, "you didn't. But I did. I knew what I was capable of. And I didn't need your permission to prove it." I walked back toward my desk, the sound of my heels echoing in the marble hall. They followed, slower this time, their eyes scanning every inch of the empire they had once dismissed as a silly dream. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one seeking their approval. I motioned for them to sit across from me at the glass desk. The skyline stretched behind me like a crown I'd quietly earned, one brick and late night at a time. Mom clasped her purse in her lap. Dad leaned forward, forearms on his knees, as if bracing himself. "I'm not telling you this to gloat," I began, my voice steady. "I'm telling you because for years, I let your opinion define how I saw myself. That ends today." They didn't interrupt, which was rare. "I'm willing to have a relationship with you," I continued, but there are conditions. Mom frowned. Conditions?
Yes.
Number 1, respect. No more jokes about what I do. No more backhanded comments about what's real or respectable. Dad shifted in his chair, but said nothing. Number 2, honesty. I need to know when you're proud of me and when you're not. But I won't tolerate silence disguised as indifference. Mom's eyes flicked to the pen in my hand, my grandmother's pen. I saw a flash of recognition there. And number 3, you have to chase your own passions. No more telling me you missed your chance. You didn't. It's never too late to build something you love. But I won't carry the weight of your regrets. They both sat with that for a long moment. The hum of the office filled the silence. Phones ringing, keys clacking, voices exchanging ideas. Finally, Dad cleared his throat. Emily, we didn't realize how much we hurt you. You didn't want to realize, I corrected gently. It's easier to dismiss something than to believe in it when it scares you. I leaned back, softening my tone. I care about you. I always have. But I won't let our relationship slip back into old patterns. If you want to be part of my life now, it has to be built on mutual respect. Mom's voice cracked when she spoke. We can do that. I nodded, standing to signal the end of the meeting.
Good.
Then let's start fresh. But this time, you meet me where I am, not where you wish I'd stayed. They rose slowly, taking one last look at the space, the empire they'd once thought impossible. And as they walked out, I realized something. I wasn't just setting conditions for them. I was setting them for myself. The office felt quieter after they left, though the same hum of work carried on. I stood by the window, the late afternoon light washing the city in warm gold. From my pocket, I pulled out my grandmother's fountain pen. I turned it slowly between my fingers, feeling the grooves where years of use had worn the metal smooth. I remembered the night she'd given it to me, the quiet conviction in her eyes, the way she said, "Sign your own future."
I had.
And now, I was living in the ink of those signatures. Over the next few months, my parents kept their word. They called more, listen more. Sometimes awkwardly, sometimes with effort, but they were trying. Dad even asked me to help him start an online store for the woodworking projects he'd always tinkered with in the garage. Mom began volunteering at a local arts nonprofit, rekindling the creativity she'd buried under years of practical living. It wasn't perfect.
Healing rarely is.
But for the first time, our conversations weren't about what I should be doing, they were about what we could do next. Together. One evening, after locking up the office, I paused at my desk. I signed the final page of a contract, our largest international client yet, with my grandmother's pen. The ink flowed smoothly, bold and certain. As I capped it, I thought about every moment that had brought me here. The mocking laughter at that dinner table, the sleepless nights in my tiny studio, the quiet mentorship of a woman who saw my worth before I did. I smiled, sliding the pen back into my pocket. Some victories are loud, flashing lights, applause, headlines. But some are quiet, steady, and absolute. I didn't just win back my dignity. I built a life that didn't need their approval to exist. Still, when I looked out at the city that had tested me and shaped me, I couldn't help but think of the girl I once was, gripping the hem of her skirt to stop her hands from shaking. She wouldn't believe what we've become. And maybe that's the point.
They mocked my job.
Now I own the industry.